Greetings, friends! Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look in movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined again by my troubled, soon-to-be rich, but seeing things that no one else is, co-host and lady who sees invisible things.
Alex Dandino. That's me.
I probably could have come up with a more concise description of what Elizabeth Moss is bringing to Invisible Man, but hey, it's the world we live in. I've only been eating rations and being quarantined in my house. All right, guys. Today we have a special show for you. Today's the day. Universal has decided to drop the movies that they were showing in theaters up until this week on video on demand. People not being able to go to the movie theaters, a lot of theaters shutting down, people social distancing, obviously for good reason. Universal had this idea, and I think it's actually a really fascinating idea, and I've been calling for this for a long time. Because as a person who has young kids, my wife and I's favorite thing to do used to be go to the movie theater, and we lost that. Like, for the last 5 years, we do not do that. We have to go in shifts unless it's a kid movie. And I've always said, if you set up to where I could rent the movie the same time it comes out to the world so I can partake in the, cultural cachet of seeing what's out, I would pay more money to watch a movie at home. Now this has happened, right? Universal's taking the step. And you've read a lot of think pieces, right? This is what's going to kill the movie industry, the theater industry, this and that. Alex and I will be talking about that on our YouTube. That's Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. You can find our channel there. Separately about what are the ramifications of this. I actually think this is really cool, though. And more people are going to get to see these movies that would have been lost to this giant, scary event, man, that we're all kind of waiting to see what's happening, right? We all kind of feel helpless and lost, but now we get to see some movies, man, to help us get by. So, Invisible Man is a movie I've wanted to cover since I saw it. It came out in theaters. Alex saw it, too. We just hadn't had the time. Now we've got a lot of time. So
Oodles.
Yeah, with that and with it dropping on video on demand, hopefully there is an increased thirst to talk about this fucking wonderful film, by the way. I think it's personally been a pretty rough run at the theater for some horror movies this early part of the year, as it often is. Some of them have been, pretty good, but some real bad ones, right? Like we had The Grudge. We had The Grudge in there. That was rough. But to go from The Grudge to Fantasy Island to these other just god-awful horror movies, and I love horror, but those were rough, to seeing The Invisible Man literally blew my hair back, where I'm just, in the theater, full of panic. The sense of dread this movie inspires. Fascinating. Again, like Zodiac, which we covered yesterday, another movie that plays a little differently and even scarier based on what we're dealing with today. So, that aside, I still think we can have a really fun talk about The Invisible Man. If you like the show, which we hope you do, please leave us a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcast app. That helps us out enormously. You can find us on all the social media apps you have, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that. We want to hear from you guys. What movies, especially right now when we're all locked in, do you want to hear us talk about? We've got more time for more shows, and we want to do the movies you want to hear about. So feel free to reach out, guys, and hit us up, man. Themes, double features, anything. Like, we're here for you guys. That's what we're doing. And again, YouTube, that's Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. All right, Alex. The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man. Part of the classic Universal monster lineup.
Monster lineup, yes.
Monster lineup. There have been plenty of Invisible People movies, right? We've seen a lot. We've actually covered Hollow Man on this show. Probably my favorite ever Invisible Person movie.
Mine too.
I think Invisible Man gives that a really good run for its money. And I love the original Universal run. All the sequels were really good too. So, just to start it off, you're leaving the theater. What were you initially thinking about The Invisible Man? First reactions.
First reaction for The Invisible Man is that it is an excellent update of the original themes of The Invisible Man. Like, I think the most impressive portion of the movie itself is that it takes what was the original intent, I think, from the the Claude Rains version, and kind of renegotiates the themes so that really what we're doing is we're not like, to me, we're never sympathizing with this guy. We're always sympathizing. We're always with Elizabeth Moss's character. And it's a perfect update of the movie and the story itself for our times.
Yeah, well, what becomes so fascinating in this movie, right, is, I think you're right, too. This is probably the only Invisible Man movie where we don't spend hardly any time sympathizing with the mad genius who just went too far. He is just portrayed as a purely monstrous form in this movie. And what I really like, I think what you said best, is this is a perfect update for today's world. Because what this movie does brilliantly is there's even that gap between Elizabeth Moss escaping and, her finally, like, re-getting attacked by this guy.
Right.
What really is the Invisible Man is this abusive partner.
Yeah.
That even if you took out the suit and whatever, she's a haunted, terrified woman. There's this lovely but tragic moment at the start of the film where, her friend who she's staying with, this, police officer, he's like, just go to the mailbox and get the mail. Right. And you see the fucking fear, right? Even a jogger can bring her whole world down. So what this movie does is says, even before we hit the kind of like horror movie fun and guts of this movie, there's already an Invisible Man haunting this woman.
Right.
And he has been for a long time. Even that whole opening act, I gotta say, this is probably, I can't think of a much better opening to a film in the last couple years.
I'm not sure I've seen better camera work in a lot of these kinds of movies.
Unbelievable.
Like, it's phenomenal.
Because what it does, too, is it's moving a lot and changing rooms. But I don't know if you got this. It had that Paranormal Activity vibe where you start looking around the whole frame like, oh, they're going to get me from over there.
I think
you're
that
so
was the
fucking
best part.
scared in that opening.
That is the best part about that opening, is that I am searching the frame for the answer. And that is exactly what you want from a movie literally about an invisible person. You're like, are they invisible yet? What am I looking for?
Which is weird because we're watching him in bed. He's visible to us a lot of that opening. But what it does, not to get like too personal or whatever, but, I've seen some of this up close and personal. Like we had some abuse issues when I was growing up. And it really captured that in a way that felt really honest to me, right? Where there is this. And my experience with it was, even when things were going right and you were having your best day, right? Like when we were having a Norman Rockwell day, you were always afraid of that one line, the one joke too far, the one something gets broken and oh fuck, like all hell's gonna break loose. Like, and that's what this does. Is there every fucking step she takes, and even now talking about it, I'm getting wound up because it's such a perfect opening for the movie, which is, here is a man that even when we see him is still invisibly haunting her. Now he's invisibly haunting us. And he's always scary no matter what setting. And it just ratchets that tension up so fast and so hard that it really puts you in. You are on high alert for essentially the rest of the movie. There is very little breathing room in this movie.
Yeah. I feel like it's interesting because the concept of the Invisible Man changes like twice in this movie. It's really fascinating. And again, like, this is why
elaborate on that. I love that. Elaborate.
It's why this is such a brilliant update of the movie itself, because again, like, it starts out as like, oh, it's an invisible man. Like, he's invisible. He's torturing this woman. Like, clearly, like, we as an audience all know that. And so I think the scary part and the thing that makes it so great for an audience to watch is we are essentially like, it's almost like locked in syndrome, where as soon as things start happening that she can't explain and she starts uttering out loud that this is an invisible man, like, it's Adrian who's chasing me, we are like all like helplessly locked into her brain going, oh my God, somebody fucking believe her, please. Because we all know, like, that's like the craziest thing. And that's the thing that I think is really, really smart and powerful about the movie, is because it takes this, look, we live in a very particular era of time where Me Too and a lot of the aspects of our life are changing every day, particularly in our presentation of our heroes, of anybody that we believe is doing the right thing or doing a good thing in the world. So for it literally to be about this person that everyone believes is doing the right thing, he's obviously eccentric, but nevertheless, he's trying to do the right thing. For this woman to constantly try to tell people something is happening to me and no one to give a shit is not only relevant, but also far more terrifying than anything else that happens in the movie, to be honest with you.
That is scarier than a guy who took some, MMA classes in a rubber suit.
Right.
The scariest thing is, oh my God, I'm the only one who knows what's really happening. And she becomes, again, because of what he's done to her, she becomes the invisible woman, man. No one will listen to her. No one wants to help her. Right. You see how fast her friends and family turn on her when she becomes difficult.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that people, who have experienced some trauma are pretty familiar with. Everyone wants to help people, and then all of a sudden when it's on your doorstep and you're like, oh shit, that might spill into my house when I'm trying to watch Roseanne. Not a fan of this, And
that's what's so tragic about the police officer. Like, that's what's tragic about the police officer and his daughter is, like, I would probably be doing the same thing. Like, that scene where Adrian as the Invisible Man slaps her in the face.
Holy shit,
that to me, I was like, oh my God. But I also know that, like, I probably would have done the exact same thing. Like, if there was an Invisible Man slapping the shit out of my kid and I came in and, like, someone's like, it wasn't me, and be like, fuck you, get out of my house. Like, you are at the mercy of logic, and when something illogical presents itself that doesn't make any sense, you can't believe someone who's sitting there who, like, that's the craziest thing. Again, like, I just, like, you're sitting there watching this movie and you're just, like, shouting. You're shouting, like, I obviously I'm not a monster, so I don't yell out in the movie theater. But
you are like the old pieces of shit that sat behind me. I was like, oh, if I had one of those rubber camera suits, all of you would suffocate on popcorn, right? I'd just be. You remember that scene in Aladdin when they turned the Sultan into the court jester, and Iago's like, eat the fucking crackers, you piece of shit. That would have been me and those three old ladies and the Invisible Man. They would have all been choking to death.
I think that scene alone was the most terrifying of this, like, helplessness she had, because that's when you realize, like, there is no one else to help her.
Yeah.
Like, the one person who's been with her the whole time is now like, I'm sorry, I got to protect my kid. And you sympathize with it, but you're like, holy shit, this is terrifying.
Well, I mean, and that's where it kind of gets into the genre thing of, here is this invention that we can't fucking fathom. And that's scary for us, too, because that feels like the world we're living in. I said this on my other podcast on the YouTube channel I run, Nick Hall Comedy Podcast. I told him this last week. I'm like, I've been doing, like, I'm a conspiracy theory, like, reader. I don't believe them all. I'm not like a fucking asshole. But, I think they're fun to read. As like a creative writer, I'm like, it's fun to see, like, where people's minds will go and shit. And I was watching, and all of a sudden I've developed this terror. I was like, holy fuck, dude, our world is going to end because of deep fake videos. Because I was like, let's say, right, like, someone today did, we're in the middle of this pandemic scare, and it is fucking scary, man. It's looming over all of us, right? Let's say someone deep faked a video of President Trump, like, fuck that guy, fuck him, I'll fuck his mother, like, just going ape shit.
Right.
We live in a world where if I saw that from our president, I'd be like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
And, like, the stock market could crash, bombs could be flying before someone's like, hey, actually, that's a fake video. Like, that's how fast things move, and it's fucking scary. So here you have these people, right? Friends and family who have lost her for a couple years. She comes back in, and she knows, man, she's been on the cutting edge of this. And they're like, an invisible boyfriend? What? And it's fun because the real emotional journey is masked. Helps you get by a rubber suit that makes him invisible. All right, whatever. Because, again, there's already an invisible man haunting her, right? And she's already the broken version of herself who's trying to rebuild.
Right. There's already suspicion.
Exactly. And it's hard for people to truly be there for someone who's in that condition, right? Even if you desperately want to be. And I think that was one of the things that struck me in the film was how fucking easily Adrian can just come into her life and just get her off kilter, right? Just steal her portfolio before an interview. Send a mean email to her sister. Things like, I mean, granted, when he drugs her, you're like, well, that's fucking truly terrifying. That's not subtle at all. But you get this sense of, oh my God, right? So this is like kind of the other version of an invisible man, right? Is maybe my sister has always hated and despised me.
Right.
But she's trying to be good. And now I've allowed her to show her true face. She's like, oh my God, my sister was the invisible sister. And now I see her. She fucking hates my guts.
Right. I think that's like the real fear. That's the real fear that grips the movie is not like, again, it's so brilliantly done. Like this isn't about
Perfect.
like the Invisible Man aspect is so just like it almost becomes irrelevant because all of this movie becomes about is this woman trying to convince people that she's not going crazy. She's not an insane person. Like all she wants to do is be believed and heard, which is something very relevant in today's society.
Oh yeah.
And for that to be really like the true invisibility, that's the most terrifying thing is like to not be listened to.
And not be believed. It really reminded me of Linda Hamilton's performance in Terminator 2 when she's in the asylum and she's just like trying to be like, no, this isn't coming because she desperately needs to get out and protect her son.
Right.
And like when she breaks and she's like, you fucking idiot. Like she's screaming it in their face. And she has such belief. And the fact that you can see someone with such belief and earnest fear and be like, what a loony. You know, like how easily we can dismiss people. It's fucking terrifying. Like this movie there are moments, right, where the invisibility to me in this one wasn't as perfect. Like an amazing scene, right? Like, well, one, I'm like, why does Adrian... So he has his cell phone in the attic. So I was like, so now I have to imagine. I'm like, how did he smuggle that in? He's like, I'll put it down by my chocha, and then I'll get it out upstairs in the attic when no one can. As, you know, I'm just thinking about like, how does this work? Why does he leave his phone buzzing in the attic? Whatever. But you're like, maybe he's playing games. But then she dumps paint. She dumps paint on him, right? In one of the all-time great, like scares I've had in the theater and like that's a terrifying scene.
It's great.
But immediately my brain goes to, oh, I've spilled paint on shit. You can't wash that off in the sink, bitch. So then I'm imagining him like running down the street, like partially painted. But you're like, that's what the movie does so well is it's so brilliantly constructed. Everywhere else, you're like, I don't care if it's a rubber suit. I don't care if he was wearing the Philly Fanatic suit and that's what made him invisible. I don't care if it's a fucking Harold Potter wizard hat. However he becomes invisible, I don't care. Because they are using the invisibility to maximum impact. They are literally bludgeoning my heart with this movie.
Right. Well, that was actually the cell phone thing. I was like, do you think he was just up there like for 3 days playing like Brick Breaker or something quietly? like,
well, no, because he's creeping when she's sleeping. So like he's got a busy schedule.
Right. So, but he's got some downtime to like wait for her to go down. So he's just like quietly like getting to level 45. He's like, yes. Like not wanting to make a noise though.
You think he's like Candy Crushing? A billionaire like that who Candy Crushes? Yeah, right. No way. But isn't that the weird thing about Adrian in this movie too? Is a lot of these movies dabble with these are men who want to be or think they are gods, but they have a little bit of humanity that keeps them from crossing that threshold, right? And then the invisibility is what does it. A lot of movies look at the invisibility from the imagine being gifted this power. What would you do with it? In this movie's he already has crossed that line. And so we don't have to waste our time being like, what would you do with invisibility? Because the whole time I'm watching the screen, I'm like, not that. Not that
well, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the best thing about this version of the Invisible Man is we're not wasting our time with an answer to a question that's already been answered, like, I don't know, 4,000 times. Like, obviously, like, everybody knows what you'd do if you were a fucking invisible person. Like, there's literally like 3 things you would do, all of which are terrible.
All bad.
So, like,
all bad behaviors.
All bad. Like, yeah, if you're an invisible person and you do these things, like, if you even think about them, you're a terrible person. Like, no matter what. So not wasting our time with that and diving directly into the psychosis of someone who's been in an abusive relationship and who contends that the person who is her abuser is secretly like essentially haunting her. That is the true like twist in the story that I think is necessary to make it relevant for now, but also just make it watchable without us like focusing on the like. The thing that I marveled about like leaving the theater really is Elizabeth Moss is obviously the star of the movie, but like I was like, what a waste of a marketing opportunity for her to like, she should have honestly, they should have Like when she was gonna walk into one of the pressers, she should have been like, "Oh, sorry, you're busy." To like an empty chair. Like, come on, that's like an obvious one.
You wanted her to do the Clint Eastwood speech from the Republican convention when he talked to that
100%.
fucking chair.
100%. But I think a really key thing is that she and like the cop are the only people that I recognize from other movies. I can tell you plainly, I've never seen the guy who plays Adrian. I've seen
that
brother.
guy. Yeah.
I've never seen those two in anything else. But that was the thing is like, imagine if it was played by someone who was like actually truly like famous as Elizabeth Moss, because Elizabeth Moss is famous from Handmaid's Tale and Mad Men. Like, what if they were fucking John Hamm? You know?
Yeah, when they were planning on doing their Dark Monster like Avengers universe, right?
Right, it was gonna be fucking Johnny Depp.
And if this is Johnny Depp, although granted, Johnny Depp might be the perfect choice. There's some terrifying things that he's working out right now.
True. Yes.
But yeah, that's what I mean. It's so not important who he is, right?
Very it's great that it's not. That is not the distraction in the movie. Like, I am so ingrained in the story the entire time simply because I don't care who the Invisible Man is. I don't care that I don't get to see, like, J-Depp in a, invisible suit. Like, that's not what I care about. Like, what I care about is Elizabeth Moss convincing people that she's not seeing things.
I don't know. I saw a commercial where he buried his necklace in the desert and then got a bottle of cologne, and I was like, that's what I need in my invisible people story. But, it's invisible. The plot of that commercial, goddammit. No, that's neither here nor there. What? But I think this is really fascinating what you're in on. Yeah, come at me, J-Depp. Just kidding. Don't. You might. What's funny about that, though, to me is when we finally see Adrian at the end, it becomes wild based on how we've experienced him this movie, right? So all we've seen is that he is this oppressive force of bad, right? And everyone around him, he somehow finds a way to catch them in this web, right? And kind of our big surprise ending is, he was buried in a hole by his brother who stole the fucking suit and has been playing this ruse the whole time.
Right.
And it seems impossible that that's true, but maybe the movie leaves it open enough that maybe he says that line at the end at dinner, like, wink, right? He gives her the line that he said invisible.
Right.
But we're watching him, and I was like, oh my fucking God, this guy's invisible in plain sight. Because, again, he cannot ever be himself, a normal person. Right? Like, his true evil side comes out in the suit. At this dinner, he's trying to pretend he's the loving, soon-to-be father of the child, and he'll be good and whatever.
Right.
And it's fun. It's just crazy to watch a guy like that go through that arc. I thought it was pretty good for he's a fairly one-dimensional character. He's a, evil, power-hungry piece of shit. But that final scene is extra chilling to me because even when we see him, there's nothing to see.
Right.
I thought that was really fucking scary, man.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I thought.
And again, it takes the piss out of him as this monster where you're like, this fucking guy.
Right. Well, God. I mean, again, like you think about that first scene, like when he literally runs up to the window and is able to literally bash it in. I was like, holy shit. Like, car windows are not easy to bash in, but with your bare fucking hand. Like, that's pretty.
I did it once when I was hammered drunk.
Right. So,
and I paid for it bad.
Pretty impossible with just like, pretty impossible when you're just normally sober.
Oh, yeah.
So, but like, from there to that final scene, and again, like the tension is so good in that fucking scene.
Yeah.
Like the whole time, you're just like, when's he gonna fly off the handle? Like, show me the Adrian we've been told is this Adrian.
That's right. He can't take his Adrian suit off though.
No, he can't.
Yeah.
Like, that's the invisibility. Like
he's
the real
got
person
to be that fucking
buried
guy
so deeply underneath.
That's kind of the weird question in the movie is like, had they gotten back together, like how long would that shit last? Till the birth? Then he's like, I got you now. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's
got you, bitch.
It's fucking intense, dude. It's intense. Let's talk about, to me, which was going to be one of the best horror movie scenes of the decade. Dinner with the Sister. Holy fucking shit.
So good.
It's one of the first, I mean, I can honestly say, I don't remember the last time, like, you can make me jump in a theater with your fake jump scares and the loud sounds and shit.
Right.
Literally had an almost jumping out of my seat moment.
It's just, like this is it's just so magnificently crafted. Like, honestly, it's
absolutely.
a pacing, because this is probably at the beginning of the third act where she's officially like, everyone thinks she's off the rails. Everyone thinks she's out of her mind. Like, her sister's already read this horrible email that was written to her, and all this other shit has happened. She like begged for this meat, and you're like, oh my God, like her sister is going to understand and finally come around. And you see it happening. Her sister's like having a change of heart, And then, I mean, again, it's just it's plain as day. It's amazing. Like, again, the turn of the scene is honestly terrifying. Like,
well, they lull you in with a like slow roll apology. Yeah, we're sisters. We're sisters. And then there's just a knife floating there, and it takes your mind a minute to be like, wait, what? Ah! And he slices her fucking throat, and she falls on the table. Knife to Elizabeth Moss, right?
Oh my God!
And what is so it's perfect the way it plays out. I'm telling you, it's one of the best horror movie scenes I've ever seen. It's fucking great.
It's so good.
The extra layer of horror in that scene is that this is the first time since it's happened that it feels like people are actually looking at her. Yeah. Right? Like they're looking her in the eye. Totally. And so the whole audience is seeing her, but as this fucking monster, right? She's just had her sister murdered in front of her face by this ghostly abusive ex, and everyone in the restaurant's looking at her like she just fucking killed her sister. Right. And the weight of that and her performance and just sitting there. I mean, Elizabeth Moss, like that moment, you're like, that's why she'll work forever. Because the amount of just dread and hopelessness and resignation and defeat and like the amount of emotions that are just waiting to erupt in that scene are staggering. And it's it's an extra level of terror that I think very few scenes achieve.
Right. I mean, I'd say even further, the thing that is, I mean, that's a good point. Like the bringing up, like her finally being seen by these people is very terrifying. I think the other thing that really gets me here, and it happens in a couple other scenes, and the sound design in this movie is fantastic.
Oh my God.
As soon as it happens, the music and the sound of like everything just comes like crashing down. Like I actually thought about this a lot. Like the house that her and Adrian live on is like on these bluffs, and the sound of the ocean is so loud in the mix. I don't know if this happened in your screening, but I was just like constantly, I'm like, why is the fucking ocean so loud? Like, but I realize the point of this like sound mix and the point of the movie itself, like a lot of the time with the audio particularly, is it's to distract us it's to lock us into the visuals. Like, I know the ocean's gonna go. Like, there's nothing about the ocean that's gonna necessarily change. So I'm stuck watching this whole thing happen. So as soon as during that dinner scene, as soon as her throat gets cut and the music just fucking just like slams into like a fucking wall, you hear everything at once, and you're just drawn in. You're like, oh my God. Like the fucking dismantling of this woman's life is complete. The whole thing is coming down right now. It's amazing in that scene.
Yeah. Cause I mean, that's the thing. Adrian has been nibbling at her. Yeah. And it must be horrendous, right? We see this horrible fight, right? Where she's, being thrown around by him and this and that. Mm-hmm. And it's horrendous. But that feels like something she's experienced before. She could get the best of him in a physical fight, you feel like. Like, she'll find a way to defeat him. Right. The brutality of how rapidly. And it's one of those things you're like, fuck, man, It's the best use of invisibility in a movie I've ever seen, because it just happens so fast and it's so cruel, and it's because she goes from there. She's in a fucking like prison hospital, right? They're like, she's fucking crazy. She went from woman who was strong enough to escape to she's refound her friend. She's gonna help this girl go to college. She's gonna be rich. Like she's gonna get her job back. To now she's fucking in an asylum. And what is crazy about the movie is that's not enough. We're like, oh, he's still going to fucking torture her. Yeah. Still. It's and also nuts. You're like, how does he not have to poop in the asylum? This is crazy. Like, how does he never have to poop in the asylum and like blow this whole roof? But this is where they drop 2 bombs on us.
No sense because he has to poop at some point.
Yeah, he's got. I mean, maybe he has like an invisible poop tube in there. I don't know. It's like sitting at like a fanny pack on his side. I don't remember the suit specifications, but no. And this is what's cool because we've already been. Yeah, absolutely. Those probably exist. But we've been through this horrific chain of events, right? And they could have just ended the movie there, and I'd been like, wow, that was fucking brutal, right? Yeah. They hit us with another 1-2 punch, which is she's pregnant. Of course he knew you were on birth control. Like, how he knows everything. You can't escape him. To the brother being like, I knew the whole time. I am working for him. We can make this go away. So now, again, in this moment, her worst nightmare realized, and someone for the first time in the movie is like, yeah, you're not fucking crazy. You're
not out of your mind. Yeah.
We know, but now it's out. And I was surprised how much impact that scene had on me. And I think because this is the thing, we knew the whole time that he was real. But there's something about the way that they lay this out, right? Lee Whannell, right? That's how you pronounce his name? The way he paces this out, right, is even though we know, we've watched this woman be so fucking pulverized by this piece of shit that just watching her have the moment of, oh, thank God, is so refreshing to us. Well, even though it's, its meaning is terrifying.
Well, I think what it is we've only seen this from her perspective. Like, no other person in this movie has seen what we've seen. So the whole time up until that point, there is like as small, as microscopic as it is, there is a shred where you're like, maybe she is like completely seeing this, because that's what the movie is supposed to do. Like, that's the best part about this is like you and I are both sitting there the whole time. You're like, oh, I know it's the invisible guy. Like, there's no way it's not an invisible guy. But in the back of your head, there's just like, it's the smallest piece, because that's what it is. Like, I don't know if I actually believe her. Like that.
And like, what's
that's
brilliant?
The terrifying thing. You feel kind of guilty for not believing her too. So you're like, no. I know there's an invisible guy the whole time, but it's just that little piece, and that acknowledgement within the universe of the movie itself is so earth shattering. You're like, okay, now I know. And it's so much more terrifying because this other person who was a lawyer who's like been trying to help, like kind of help but not really help the whole time, indicates that, oh my God, like there's no way out of this.
Yeah. And that's Elizabeth Moss always plays it with that vulnerability and that open wound that lets you know that there's probably a part of her that questions it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But that's what I think it's just that in a movie that's so much a pressure cooker, it's just one moment of like, oh, thank God. Like, it's like, because that, like you said, right? Maybe that's it, is that you're just like, oh, she isn't just a crazy person losing her mind. Like, okay, good. We can get back to just rooting for her to kill this piece of shit. Right. You know what I like? Because I was just like, why is this like seem okay? Like, this is terrifying. Now we just know she's locked in here. Like, because again, the implications of what he's saying are really, really bad.
It really feels like, to be like, I honestly, like, I walked out of the theater because I thought about that. I'm like, why is there a part of me that was like, was she crazy? Up until that point, I think it's because, again, there's like that guilt of, oh, I didn't believe her. Like, that is like, and that above all else, especially nowadays, is so prevalent. That was the part that I was like, oh my God, like, that's what this is.
Imagine her friend, the cop, later in life. Like, he will, at the end of the movie, he's just like, hell yeah, I'll be an accomplice to murder. Because he's like, man, those moments when I go pick up my daughter's tuition are going to be hella awkward.
Right.
Right? After I was such a bad fucking friend. He's like, murders? Yeah, let's roll. We're cool, right? At the end, he's like, I know I'm a cop and all, but murders.
Why not? I'll help you figure out how to do it. No problem.
And that's, I think after that moment, I'm way less interested in the gap between her escaping the hospital, right? There's this scene where he just starts taking out cops, and I was like, all right, this is fun. It's a fun game.
Yeah.
The rain scene really bothered me, because I'm like, I don't care what cameras you have, you would see I think, maybe, I don't know. So I was like, all right, this is kind of,
Yeah.
You know, we've lost that cat and mouse moment, and now it's her on the attack. But it gets me right back once they get in the house, because now Adrian is attacking other people again,
Right.
and that's back to the fear, because it's a really good trick the movie pulls, which is once we know she's pregnant, there is a bit of relieving of the tension, right? Like, that idea is terrifying. And you're like, oh, fuck, now, like, there are bigger stakes because there's a child. But also you're like, he's not going to, like, stab her and shit, right? Like, he has to be okay with her, right? And he wants to make sure. So it's a weird moment in the movie where raising the stakes seemingly lowered the tension for me. But then they get it back immediately because of what the brother was saying, which is, you know, oh, he can hurt more than you.
Yeah.
And that is, oh, you're like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm back. And when he beats the fuck out of that cop, that made me almost cry in the theater, man. I felt so bad for that dude. I felt so bad for that guy. You know what? It's just, I think that's what the movie is. I felt really bad for that guy. I don't know how else to say it. I was just watching the screen. I'm like, he's just trying to, like, help his crazy friend and his daughter. And next thing you know, he's just getting his ass beat from, like, nowhere. Yeah, by a guy that he could definitely beat up, and because that's the other thing. Now imagine him moving forward. Strong, powerful, good dad, good man, who, you know, I will protect my daughter. Now, every day for the rest of his life, he's like, dude, I got jumped and sucker punched by this fucking invisible wimp. And he couldn't protect anyone. Like, he's now going to be haunted forever.
Right.
It's, I don't know. That scene was emotionally devastating to me, just watching that guy get his ass beat. And then they kill the brother. Now, okay, let's walk through this twist ending. What did you think of the ending of the movie?
Like the twist on the brother and all that shit?
No, so they say, oh, the brother, Adrian sets it up where he's like, he put me in a cave and he stole my suit, my fancy suits. And he, killed everyone, right? It wasn't me. I was innocent. He sets up the dinner, and Elizabeth Moss goes with her friend in tow.
Right.
So I think the ending is very satisfying for what it was.
Yeah, I mean,
because this is what I'd ask you, right? Is it better to have that again cat and mouse scene, right? The dinner cat and mouse now, rather than her pulling the mask off and Adrian's just been stabbed in that hallway?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like, I mean, that's what the movie is. Like, it's the reversal of what's happened the entire movie. Like, I actually think her, like, stabbing him and pulling off the mask actually would have been way less satisfying.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, like, that's not what this movie's about. Like, this movie is not about getting the bad guy. Like, and I think that's, like, it is, but that's not the important part. The important part is beating Adrian at his own game. So, like, this whole time he's been playing this cat and mouse. He's been fucking with her. He literally murdered her sister in front of her.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and has the fucking balls to be like, do you want lobsters or meatballs? Fucking. How does he fit those giant nuts in that invisibility suit? What a piece of shit that guy.
Yeah, you
for a guy with no screen time, you hate him so fucking much.
You do.
But that's cool because the invisibility lets you, it becomes this empty basin for everyone you've hated and hurt you.
So that scene is so much more important because that's the satisfaction.
But let me run this by you, right? She says, right, we can make this okay again. You have to tell the fucking truth. Right. Is there a world where he could have told the truth there? And she doesn't murder him?
No, absolutely not.
So you think she just knows he cannot, he's incapable of telling the truth?
I mean, that's
what if he would have fucking fooled her and said, yeah, I did it. I fucking did it. I got you back, didn't I, baby?
And he would have, I think she still, like, even
she
if
still
he told the truth,
she
still would have done it because, I mean, that's like the important thing. Like, the important thing is, like, that's what it is about. It's not necessarily about murdering him. It's about, like, okay, let's say if he had admitted that he had done it.
Which he kind of does. He says the line, right? In his own dickhead way, he admits what he did.
Right. So he kind of admits what he did. So, like, let's say it was much less elegant than that. And he goes, yeah, I did it.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
What if he, like, Gone Girl'd it and he's like, You should just be happy to be back, Ben.
Right. Like, what if he had said, yeah, I did it, and what are you going to do about it?
Oh.
Like, then it becomes less cat and mouse, and then you're expecting the fight.
Yeah.
But because he's not willing to relinquish the truth, that absolves her really of any wrongdoing in her eyes, because she knows that she has taken the power back. Because she like that's the power struggle in that scene, is right when she walks in, she is there to take back what's hers, which isn't the house or anything like that. It's honestly just her dignity as a person, because he's put her through the ringer. He's put her in a fucking prison hospital, murdered her sister, got her ostracized from her friend and her friend's daughter's house. Like, he has dismantled her life.
He did the most awful thing you can do to a person, I think. It's funny. What was that book I was reading? It was Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote it, right? And I think it's Between the World and Me.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about how certain things that are done take away the safety in your own body, and how absolutely devastating that is to a soul. And that's kind of what he's done. He's just fucking eviscerated her, right? And so this is her, because this is what I wondered, right? I think what you said is really interesting, right? It's her taking it back, and it absolves her in a way. I don't know if that's the word I would use, right? Because there is this moment of, I think she wants to give him the chance, but she knows, and he knows, and they both know that they know, right? So that's what I was searching for, is like, what is this moment to her? Because no matter what he says, she's really going into that closet, getting the suit, and fucking him up. That's happening no matter what, right? You think so?
Oh, yeah, totally.
So what this is, because she has to know that there's no humanity in this man, right?
No.
So what is she hoping for in that scene? Does she actually want that moment of him admitting wrongdoing?
I don't think that's the point of the scene. The point of the scene is literally just for her to... It's only so she can take her own, take the power of the situation back for herself. Like, that scene has nothing to do with anything more than absolution. Not necessarily... You're right. Absolving's the wrong word. But absolution of pursuit is what it is. Like, she now is the one pursuing him.
Gotcha.
Like, that to me, I think, is probably the more important thing, is that Elizabeth Moss's character doesn't need to kill him. Like, she could probably just show someone the suit and be like, guess what? This motherfucker's been doing this the entire time. I have I'll show you a video, I'll show you how he did it, all this shit. She could do that. But instead, this is an update of this is the Invisible Man, though. Think about it. Like, in the original, Claude Rains dies with the secret. So conceivably, this is the same thing where Adrian dies knowing he's already accomplished this. Elizabeth Moss, though, locks it away, essentially saying no one needs to be this person.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, yeah. Because he has taken so much from her, and I'm not sure if I love the all the way ending, right? Like, seeing him get his fucking throat sliced is amazing.
It's pretty cool.
And we'll talk about some kind of plot hole issues in a minute. But there's a moment when she walks outside and she's like, "Hey, friend who didn't believe me and has a daughter, I'm now implicating you in a crime."
Right.
And the thought that this is just going to go away immediately, and no one's going to be like, well, this is fucking strange, we should investigate like crazy, right? Take all that stuff aside, right? The idea of him letting or turning her barbarous, as it were, right? I don't know that all the way landed with me. And I don't know if that's just maybe we have a male perspective on things. It's, how we are. It's our world. Sure. And I don't know if maybe what I wanted is more of, a classic her to be stronger and him, die some other way. But it felt weird to me that she was so cold and calculated at the end. But then you're like, isn't that exactly how we would all be?
Well, I mean,
there was something that felt slightly off in watching her just become him to me.
I mean, you think about, I wouldn't even say that she became him. Like, she simply
not nearly the depth of depravity, but, cold, calculating, invisible.
I mean, I guess there is a symptom of like beating someone at their own game.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that, but I'd say like more to the point, she takes it upon herself. Like she takes it upon herself to like kind of complete this moral imperative, essentially. Like she's seen what this can do.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, if you've seen someone who can turn invisible and literally get away with anything,
right?
The estimation,
and now she knows the baby. I keep forgetting about if she doesn't take him out, he will be always haunting the baby.
Right.
Of course,
so
yeah. You got to kill that motherfucker then.
So if you have to kill them, you have to kill it to save the world, save your child, and save yourself. You're threefold completing a moral imperative you have to do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're unleashing.
Good point.
Hell on earth with this guy who literally can just be invisible whenever he wants.
True.
Not only that, he's invisible whenever he wants around a child, which like I think about like if I wasn't like, let's say if my wife and I were not together and I was just like an invisible person hanging, like it's interesting. I actually thought a lot about that episode of Batman, the animated series, who also the guy who has like the invisible suit, all he wants to do is hang out with his daughter the whole time and pretends he's like a ghost for her. Yeah. Like that's really what I thought was like, really sweet. Dude, that's the fucking guy.
But you're not a bad guy piece of shit. He'd be the one who's like, his son's not doing push-ups, so he's like whipping him. And the son's like, ow, what the fuck? Right, like I'm trying to play Fortnite. You know, like Adrian is a piece of shit. Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things in the theater. I just remember being like, damn, like she's turning dark. I even had that moment where I was like, is she going to keep using that suit?
Oh, see now, but see, like that's.
I don't know. There must be enormous power in that moment for her. I got this piece of shit, and I think we all agree he's a piece of shit, and we're not sad he's killed. But like, again, this is the thing. She's journeying down the dark path that he took,
right?
And there was a part of me that is sad to think that could continue after the movie's over.
Right. I mean, like that to me, if I was playing devil's advocate, particularly if I was a woman, I would sit there and say like, so it's okay for him to have this power, but not for her. Like,
no, I don't think anyone. But that's what I mean. I was wanting more of like we'll burn it all down.
Well, that's
when
what I'm
she
saying.
Puts it in the duffel bag. You're like, oh man, she wants that fucking thing. She didn't destroy it. She wants that fucking thing.
That's the interpretation you could take from it. The interpretation I took was that she would probably destroy it.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that she would because the police are going to be, and not only police, like once it's out that there's an invisible tech, like now you're talking about governments and spies.
Exactly.
But to me, it read as this is something I can use to easily solve a horrible problem. I think that's intoxicating, and I think that's what is I love movies that put you in a brilliant ethical dilemma like that, where you're like, I think we all agree that Adrian got what he deserved, and he was a piece of shit. He would have been a prolonged problem.
Right.
Also, though, I hate seeing a woman who's gone through so much abuse and trauma, who now may be tempted to, these darker behaviors because of what she was put through, man. I think you wanted a happier ending for her, or I did personally.
I mean, that's the happiest ending I think that was going to be accomplished.
Yeah, she's probably super stoked in that moment.
She's been through so much. She's a completely different person than the person we met at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. She now has seen she's seen what this person that she supposedly loved was capable of. Like,
right,
just
but
because
he took so many parts of her. Like I hate thinking that part was then replenished with the worst parts of him.
I don't think that's the case.
Well, I mean, it happens. Sometimes people that deal with these traumas, right, it just breaks part of you. It just breaks parts of you forever.
Yeah,
man.
but there's not a lot about the way that the scenes, like the way that last scene ended, there's not a lot about that made me think, oh, she's going to become a huge piece of shit.
Right, and I'm with you, except for taking the fucking suit, man.
I mean,
taking the suit and implicating your friend in the murder, I was like, ooh, these are like steps to the criminal side.
I mean, implicating your
I'm
friend
all
in the
for
murder,
the throat slice, right? You convinced me on that. I kept forgetting she had a kid at the end of the movie.
Implicating your friend in the murder guarantees the cooperation of your friend because he's a cop, and if he gets caught, he's fucked. So you're guaranteeing a cooperation. Yeah. I honestly believe, okay, if she had destroyed the suit there, okay, let's say if she had thrown it in the water, some dipshit would have found it and be like, hey, what the fuck's this?
Yeah. That's true.
I think she knows she's the only one who can dispose of it properly. Without
You think she destroys it at the end?
I do.
If she destroys it at the end, that completely invalidates my whole theory. So that's the sticking point. It's the taking the suit. Because if she takes it straight to like a compactor, smashes that fucker up and dices it and spreads it, ashes on like the ocean, then yeah, my whole weird feeling is invalidated.
I mean, but that's the best part about this movie is like you have to decide for yourself. Like I am deciding that this person has changed so significantly that she's going to do the right thing.
That's true.
That's the best part about this
because Adrian is already a piece of shit. So we don't really see what effect the power of the suit has on him.
Right.
She's the first person in the movie who's not already a piece of shit, who then is able to be at that, Pandora's box moment. And I think maybe that's why it was sitting weird with me. I don't know.
Could be.
But honestly, just this movie from start to finish it is an absolute masterwork of tension, right? It's just suspenseful and it's brilliant. The camera work is unbelievable, right? Because like I said, it gave me that same dread that something like Paranormal does. But Paranormal is a lot of like rhythmic, panning camera or stationary camera. And the stillness adds to the fear, right?
Right.
This one it's more of a, corner of your eye. Like, oh, fuck. And the way every shot is framed is just, it has that exact same impact to me.
Oh, yeah.
Where the amount of dread that is pouring out of the screen as you're getting ratcheted up, as no one will believe her, there is an invisible weight sitting on you, the audience member, that you cannot shake the whole time. And we talk about this a lot, right? There's a difference between, there are a lot of horror movies, but there are very few that leave me actually horrified.
Yeah.
And I think this one does that really well. Like there are moments in that film that truly sent shivers down my spine.
Absolutely. It's just one of those great movies where you see because I think about the first time I saw a trailer for like Hollow Man or something like that,
Yeah.
It's the same, like you're like, oh, okay, that looks like fun. This one was the first time like I've seen a movie where like the title, The Invisible Man, I'm like, whatever. I get it. But I walked into that theater not knowing what to expect, and I walked out like hugely surprised by how deep it went. It was great.
And it's just the predatory nature of him and the character and that's what I think separates this one. And again, it is very timely, like you said, but again, I've gone through some of this and like watching how real it is, that fucking omnipresent terror. It's timely. And it's super well done, and it rings true with something that we're all fucking afraid of, man. Totally. And this is an interesting subpoint to this, right? Because I think that's what separates this movie, right? And why it becomes actually scary is because of how emotionally invested we are in the amazing Elizabeth Moss performance we're watching.
Right.
Now, I've heard people on Twitter, right? As soon as this came out and was doing gangbusters, right? It's doing great. People love it. It'll probably make a fuckload of money today on Friday, hopefully. People were saying, here we go. This is the start. This is the start of our Universal monster movies being remade. I find that laughable. What do you think?
Nope. Hard pass. Stupid.
Well, what I was telling people too online is I was like, the reason this movie's hitting so hard, right? One, because it's just masterful horror and suspense storytelling, right? But again, it's that real emotional trauma that we can latch onto, and it's very timely. How do you do that with The Creature from the Black Lagoon as effectively?
Well, climate change. But also, I also wouldn't...
You all forgot. You all forgot.
If I'm just like tossing it out there. But no, I would say like with this movie and with other Universal monster movies, there's no reason to do that. Like if you can make great standalone pieces like this without any like this was.
And I think that's what they're saying, right? Not a monster verse, but like, oh, we'll get the modern 2020 Dracula.
And that's fine. Like if that's what we get to do, that's cool. Like I'm fine with those.
If they're all as good as this. The problem is I think this movie, through perfect alchemy, right, is exactly crafted to scare the fuck out of us in this moment, right?
That I think this is the key element of this movie and what they need to do going forward for if we're going to do more Universal monster movies. This is what it has to be, because this is the mistake of like the Mummy, so to speak, is it can't be this big fucking blockbuster gangbuster special effects fest. Because that's not what these movies were originally. It has to be these middle grade horror movies. That's where they have to live, because that's where that originally came from. Like all the people who watched, I mean, I think about that. Like think about all the people who watched like when we watched Frankenstein and Dracula, like the original ones, they weren't putting them out as like, oh, these are tent poles for the summer. Yeah. They're putting them out like, well, this is a movie we made.
Here's a story. It has a specific kind of, fable to it. Yeah.
That's how it has to be, because if it's not, we're just putting way too much pressure on a story that already was successful in its own right.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is not make it successful for everyone. Make it successful for the audience it's intended for.
Well, take those lessons, right? Like this is a great example of someone who really sat down and thought, where is the fear of Invisible Man coming from, and found the way to weaponize it for today, right? What is actually really, really scary about the Wolfman or Frankenstein that we haven't all the way looked at through the kind of prism of the world we live in today, right? We've done that story a lot. How do we find that new thing? I pray to God, if we got all those movies in a version this good, it would be the best thing that happened to me.
It'd be awesome.
The best. I would love it. I would fucking love it. I just don't know, man. I don't know if that's there to be had, per se.
I mean, I think ultimately you just have to hope that nobody gets a really stupid hair up their ass about it.
Well, I mean, and like you said, too, the difference between this movie and The Mummy, right? I personally believe horror works better close to your body, right? So I think that's why World War Z is not like a not scary cartoon, and Night of the Living Dead is truly terrifying.
Right. Well,
right. I mean, you have to bring it down to that level where it's a person we truly are worried about being in danger.
Well, I think that World War Z, again, the movie is so different from because the book to me is very scary because...
that book is like little journal entries and like personal writing. So it's a bunch of small scary stories.
It's all close to the chest stories. Like that's what's great about the book. The movie obviously does the thing that...
Well, it's like The Mummy. It's like, I know that Tom Cruise isn't in danger because who's going to run through the streets as a storm hits? You know what I mean? Like, you didn't hire him with that beautiful running hair and bod, to get fucking taken out. Like, I get it. So, I don't know. I would love it. And honestly, I wanted that version of the Monsterverse, too.
Sure.
I was really excited for the Russell Crowe, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
I thought it would have been awesome,
I was ready for that shit.
I was
hardcore.
Psyched.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, I still wish that somebody would have read one of my tweets and done Key and Peele meet Frankenstein, but that's... That's another lifetime,
Hey, man, all I can say is that anytime I am lucky enough to go experience a horror movie this good in the theaters, I am ecstatic. And again, despite the three old sacks of shit behind me trying their best to ruin it by talking the whole time, I was so engrossed that even I didn't care or yell at them.
Perfect.
I didn't shush them. I didn't say anything. I was like, I'm too busy with what's up here. Fuck those old biddies. I'm fine. And that's how powerful this movie is. I didn't yell at someone in a theater.
Powerful.
I know, right? Guys, I hope you loved Invisible Man as much as we did. I hope you saw it in the theater. And if you weren't lucky enough to do that, I know you'll still love it at home, man. It's video on demand. You can rent it right now. I know $20 seems like an awful lot for a 48-hour rental. We'll talk about this on our YouTube short. I think that's the wrong price point for a rental, right? Especially if it came out, if you're asking me to pay that much the same day it comes out in theaters, fine. But for so many people having already been to the theater to see it, I think that's a weird price point. But that's neither here nor there. I hope this movie gets all the fucking monies, and I hope we get a lot more movies like this. I hope we get a fuckload more Lee Winnell movies, which it sounds like we will. Another fucking monster hit for Blumhouse. Another great day for modern horror, which we have many now. So that's it, guys. Find us on your social medias. We're everywhere you're at. We want to hear from you, movies you'd like us to cover, especially in the next month or however long this, kind of staying at home is going to last. Find us on YouTube. That's Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. And, as always, if you like the show and you're listening to us on a podcast app, give us a rating and review. That helps us out a ton, especially on Apple Podcast app. So yeah, guys, I hope you're enjoying tons of great movies like Invisible Man. We love talking to you, and hopefully we'll be bringing you a lot more movies and pods soon. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.
Bye.